Hey guys, it's Cara from Enchanted Vines, and today I'm here to talk about greenery. I'm going to be doing an all greenery wreath, and so I'm going to be using yellow based greens. Okay, so we're going to be using our ficus, we are going to be using some ruscus, we are going to be using some mixed fern, and then we are going to use some woodland fern. And I purchased these all from Pioneer. And so the different types of greenery, so like I said, this is yellow based. The other version is considered blue based. So if you think about lamb's ear or certain shades of eucalyptus, it just kind of has that blue undertone. And I feel like when we're picking our greenery, we always want to stick with one family of color. So this is what we're working with today. All right, so I've already prepped my wreath. It has a hook on it, it has the loop on it, and I prepped my materials so we can just move. All right, so the first layer that I'm going to do is, you know, my favorite F word, ficus. And you get a lot of bang for your buck with ficus. I get mine through Pioneer, like I said, but there are lots of places you can get it. You can get it through Factory Outlet. You could get it through Craft Outlet. Craft Outlet actually has a big variety of different colors that you can use. So it's nice because it's an affordable greenery. Like these are about $1 a piece. So they're affordable and they also take up a lot of space. So right now I'm kind of creating the parameters for this wreath. It's going to be all greens and then it's going to have a large bow in it. Hello, Bernadette. So this customer bought this wreath maybe a month ago and a hurricane has stolen it. So that hurricane has good taste, but that's not right. So we are recreating the same wreath for her. I'm not sure I would do well in areas that have hurricanes. Not I don't think, I wouldn't. So, power outages used to stress me out. Alright, so I'm just kind of alternating with going inside and out. And I'm going to do another layer. So I pre-cut 7 of these ficus. So each piece of ficus I get 3 of these nice long pointy pieces. And then I get 1 extra little bonus piece that we lovingly refer to as the nubbin. Sometimes we use it, sometimes we don't. I'm going to say in order to cover the base of this wreath, we're going to use them. Why waste product if it can assist? And as I'm doing this, I'm just giving everything a little bend. These are really malleable materials, so you always want to make them work for you. So don't be afraid that they're gonna break or anything. Alright, now let me just rotate this because I always end up ignoring certain parts of this, and we need this to be very symmetrical. So starting in this top corner, which is pretty much where I always start. It's like it's where the muscle memory comes into play. So I always start there. Bend. So I love these full wreaths. I do think it's a bit more challenging, like as opposed to a crescent wreath, just because everything does need to be so balanced. So I find a lot of the time I think I'm done and I go outside to take a photo of it and I'm like, oh, nope, something is off. So we shall see today. Someone said the other day they were, maybe it was yesterday even, they were working and they were listening to me and I was making them sleepy. And whenever I tell my husband that, he thinks it's hysterical because he does not find me to be a soothing person. He misses out, I guess. Alright, so, and if you have some glue that's fallen on your leaf, you should just let it dry. Because if you let it dry, there's a good chance you can scrape it off. But if you get it while it's still drying, it ends up kind of smearing on there, and then the green is no good. Which on this is not the biggest deal because you can just pull that particular leaf off. But for some products, you know, say you're using like a succulent or something, you might actually like ruin it. So it's best to just let them dry. And so ficus is definitely one-dimensional, which is why I like to use a couple different other greens, ones that kind of are going to jump off more. So this is strictly like the foundation. Alright, so let me grab our little nubbin guys, our little bonus pieces. This is like their day to shine with the nubbins. Alright, so I'm going to start top corner and just work my way around. Looking for where I can see the grapevine base. Not necessarily alternating here, I'm just using this to kind of plug up those bare spots. Yeah, I felt so bad to hear about that wreath. I wonder if, I hope like homeowners insurance covers all of those things. I'm sure that experience is very stressful, and then property damage on top of it. I'm getting a lot of glue strands, and I'm just realizing that my glue pot is not hot enough. So this is, the pink one is the Grace Monroe from Surebonder, and I have this one and I have the green one. What I like about her is that she starts off on a lower temperature. I feel like the green one, he always just starts off a little bit on the hotter side, so I have to turn him off a little bit more often than her. She is less likely to smoke. And then I use the Surebonder pellets, which I also think are less likely to smoke compared to other brands. Alright, so I'm going to take a step back and see that this is neglected. I have pacing dogs, I apologize. I think it's because my mom put a marrow bone outside, and my guess is the shepherd had it and now somebody else wants it. I think Ertie's stressing someone else is going to get her bone. And she's probably right. So we have been training Steve. Steve is very possessive and snippy with other dogs. Doesn't matter how big or small they are. And we are getting ready to get our puppy. Should be the beginning of June. So I'm very concerned about Steve snipping at the puppy. So we got collars for he and Bernie, and I don't even have to turn it on. One, we took out the metal prongs because we're not gonna use the e-collar part. It beeps, and then if you really needed to up it, then it vibrates, but we're not gonna do have the stem actually, you know, working on them. They're too small and their behaviors don't warrant it. So we took out the metal prongs, so there is no zapping. There's just some annoying beeps. And I didn't even know Steve's wasn't on the other day, and he was just like an angel. So hope for him, yet, that he will not torture this dog. Because this puppy is going to be a lot bigger than him very quickly. So. And I don't know if you saw in in the shorts section of YouTube, I did like a little brief tour. You know, shorts can only be a minute long, so it was very brief on my overflow room and how I try and keep it organized. So after I did that, I was like, I feel like I have more wreaths made. And sure enough, I had like 3 of them in my dining room because I photographed them. So I talk about not getting the talk, and then there I go. Not following my own advice. So I think I've done my last order for spring, or I really am hoping I am. I have a lot of spring supplies on hand, and we are like mid to late April. Actually, we're late April, I would say. So I have to hustle and try and use up as much as I can. Hopefully with Mother's Day coming, you know, that's a good one. Also, you know, it's a great housewarming gift if you can get in with real estate agents and make it as easy as possible for them to use you as closing gifts. I have a local agency that uses my services, and I'm like, yes, I will deliver it tomorrow. You need something today. You know, I have enough on hand that I can accommodate. And then I was looking to see what I have for bins of fall, even though I totally don't want to think about it. I was just curious. I really don't have a lot of flowers. I have a ton of like pumpkins and accents, but not a lot of flowers. So and that equals me having to spend some money. All right, so we have our first layer in. Now we're going to go in with, so this is the woodland fern, and these are pushers. So you can push them up real tight, but I want to keep it airy. So I am going to leave them a little bit on the looser side. And I cut up 2 bushes. I may have gone a little overboard. So I think I'm using, because I just used another piece of ficus. So right now we're at 8 pieces of ficus. And this may or may not be up to 2 bushes of this woodland fern. And there are lots of places to get good greenery. You know, Hobby Lobby definitely has some. We found some good ones at Joann's this week. We found, it was called a berry bush. So if you look in, there's a video on dupes. That's a good one. I've been using that in like my expensive designs. It's really just a beautiful product. And then I'm pretty sure the other one that someone recommended was a sage bush from Joann's. So you know how inexpensive their stuff is. And this week I think I'm going to do a field trip to Joann's and like just record it, because I don't think people often see that there are new Joann's, and we actually have one in New Hampshire, and it's like beautiful. You would never expect it. So I thought that might be fun. I just hope I don't go and spend a bunch of money. I have really poor impulse control when it comes to being like around materials. I'm pretty sure some of you can relate to that. So yes, for those selling, when we're thinking about holidays coming up, like Mother's Day, there's several different avenues for you to get the word out. So I use social media. So I use Instagram and Facebook for selling. And then I also have an email list. So I don't email as much. I know a lot of people email like at least weekly. I don't know. I feel like I feel like from me it would be a little bit spammy. So I do about once a month or whenever, like if I want to do a flash sale, like, say it's, mid to late May and I have way too many wreaths on hand, like there's a very good chance that I will do a flash sale that only people on my email list will be notified of. I mean, you could definitely do it on social media too, but I just like to think that when people sign up for things that they get an added benefit, because they did. They're the first to know. Now, yesterday what I did, because I was so deep in my overflow run, was I started looking at wreaths that hadn't sold, and like one of them was over a year old. One of them was a magnolia wreath, and that one I took down probably like 2 or 3 years ago because I had used Real Touch magnolias, and I didn't know Real Touch is not meant to go outside. So luckily it was still with me when it started to kind of change colors. So it's just been sitting there this whole time. The greenery is still beautiful, but again, just sitting there. So I had a couple of like regular magnolias. It's definitely a minimalistic wreath. Like you would not think I made it. But I'm like, that's just money sitting there. And when we're spending all this money on supplies, like we need a plan as to how we're going to gain that back. There's a good chance we're just reinvesting it, which is great, but we definitely don't want to just be out with all these supplies and no money coming in. So I might also de-stash. I've tried to open up an Etsy shop more than once. I think when it comes to Etsy, you want to keep everything separate. So say you sold your wreaths, but then you also sold, I don't know, paintings. It can be confusing for customers when they're going to a shop and then like they're typing in about wreaths, in their search bar, and then they come up and they see paintings. So it's better to keep them separate. So like I would not want to de-stash where I'm selling wreaths to my customers. But I also don't know why Etsy has shut the shop down twice. So I have not gotten very far with it, but I have so many projects or supplies for projects that I really thought I was going to do, and I did not. So I want to unload some of that. Like flowers at some point, if they're, if they're really not great looking, I end up just donating them to, like last year I went to a kids art camp. I used to have contact with this woman who did, the monument arrangements for people who couldn't afford them at our local, at the cemetery in town is what I'm trying to say. So she was like the best because I felt really good about that. I mean, I feel good about giving it to kids too, but I think that, people want to be able to honor their loved one, and I just think it would be nice if they had some flowers there. Maybe I'm not so soothing now. All right. Let's get back to talking about wreaths, shall we? So a wreath like this might not be very expensive when we're looking at materials. However, this is going to be a more a time-consuming wreath because I know that there's going to be a lot of like tweaking to it at the end. So sometimes you don't have to. It's good to establish a formula that you feel good about, whether it's 2 times the supplies, 2.5, 2 3/4, 3, 4, whatever it is. But sometimes when it is a more complicated design too, you want to get compensated for your time, so you might want to add a little bit to that formula. And when I do the full style wreath, I do add to it. Alright, so we still have a little bit of this fern left. But now I'm going to move into our ruscus. Let me just see. I know as these things get bigger, I need to remember to back up the camera and not block. So what I love about this ruscus is that it's got, you know, a little bit of variegation. It's got some yellowing towards the tips, but my favorite part is the movement of it. So there's a lot of flow to these, and I like to keep these, you know, either kind of on the inside or the out, but I like for them to have that cascading effect. I don't want it to get, you know, lost amongst everything, so I always like that crawling effect, and ruscus is very good for it. I did find ruscus at Joann's, and it was not terrible by any means. It didn't have the same coloring, but it did have like a nice movement to it. So again, if you wanted to go to that dupes video, I did end up putting the SKU numbers for any of the things that we reviewed. And I've used some of those dupes. I've used the purple cabbage roses, and they look great. I did steam them. I do feel like they need a little bit of TLC, so I did steam those, and they look beautiful. And the white cabbage roses, literally I went to use the other day, and I actually picked up the dupes by mistake, thinking it was my regular ones. So that's how close or accurate the white cabbage roses are. I could not tell the difference, and I've been working with those cabbage roses for years. So a great dupe. Somebody does like wedding work, like, oh, it's a great dupe. In here. And this Saturday I get to go to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. I know I keep talking about this, but I'm getting like really geeked up about it. I'm getting a little fangirlish. I'm going to be doing a masterclass with live florals with Sienna Dune, who just the way she talks about her work and the passion that she has for it, I bought the ticket right away. I Googled her, watched a YouTube video, and I was like, oh, yeah, I have to meet this person. So, incredibly talented, great attitude about work, and I don't know, it felt like I was meant to get it, and, you know, I checked maybe like a week later and it was sold out, so I'm glad that I'm so... Sometimes being impulsive is a good thing, or not hesitating. And being impulsive gets me into a lot of trouble. So, say not hesitating. So this is going to be an all greenery wreath, except this client had also ordered separately one of the chinoiserie bows, so I'm going to end up putting that on before it ships, but technically she purchased them like as separate items. So if you are looking to beef up your Etsy shop, then one thing that you could do is find a base wreath, like something like this, and you could show it with different ribbon on it, And then you can also do a separate listing for just the bow. As long as you just make it very clear that, you know, like wreath only, bow only in all caps. You know how I feel about all caps, but just for that particular thing, I'm going to say it's worthy of all caps, just so somebody's not totally disappointed. And so like, I think that's a good thing to do, whether it's like a floral wreath too. Maybe you don't attach the bow thoroughly. Maybe you put it on a floral pick and don't glue it, and then you can take it in and out, and that way you could do multiple listings. Like, you know, one hydrangea wreath, but you've styled it 7 different ways and listed it differently. You know, trying to find the SEO, like those keywords that are going to draw somebody in. You know, 5 is the minimum to open your shop, but Etsy definitely wants you to have more. I've heard the magic number is 100, but honestly, like, I've never had 100. Right now, I think I have I have 75. And that's another thing is, you know, sometimes you make these things and you don't list them. So yesterday, I went through and I was like, oh my gosh, like, there were several things that were not listed. And so that's, you know, it's never going to sell if nobody can see it, obviously. So we can't just let things sit. We need to have a plan to execute. And it's nice to do things in batches. So yesterday I looked at 4 different wreaths that hadn't sold. So 2 of them had bows. So I took out the bows and I filled it with, I backfilled it with the same florals. And then I rephotographed them and, you know, used different tags. And then what I did was when I bagged them up to store them, I just kept the bow with them, and that way, with whatever version somebody orders, I have everything. I wouldn't want to like use the bow on something else and have somebody buy it and then have to have that awkward conversation of, sorry, I don't have what you bought on hand. And it's okay to have, you know, a little clause on your listings that, you know, due to supply and demand, some items may be, you know, comparable but not identical. And I think that's a good practice to have. For me, I feel like if I don't have the exact thing, I'm still going to reach out just to let them know and make sure that they approve it. And actually, this is a good example because when this woman bought this wreath, she actually bought a Greenery wreath that had sold on my other site. So, you know, I have my Etsy shop, and then I have my direct website, you know, enchantedvines.com. And so it had sold on one, and I didn't take it off the other. So this one's nicer anyways, so I made sure I made it nicer, and then I sent her a picture, and she was like, yep, this one's better anyways. So it's not like people aren't going to be understanding, but you don't want to lose a sale. If somebody could technically cancel at that point. And we don't want that. We worked hard to get them to our page. So yeah, so 2 now are listed with and without bows. And then I did the magnolia wreath, and then there was another full cottage style wreath, and it just, I don't know why it hadn't sold. I think maybe it was like a little plain, you know, like sometimes we just have to have like an honest look at our work and say like what isn't appealing to people, because if we don't have like that, if we don't analyze it, then nothing's going to change and it's not going to sell, and we're going to, you know, have more inventory on hand than we want. So when I looked at it, I was like, you know what, I think I just made it a little bit too mellow, and it had, you know, the really big hydrangea blooms, which I love, but then it also had these, you know, unrealistically big peonies, and I'm like, maybe it just looked a little bit too basic. So I pulled the big peonies out and I backfilled with some smaller florals just to kind of create that texture. So we shall see. But there was another wreath. I made it on TikTok Live recently. It was the same night as TMI, so I wanted to use more of the TMI ribbon. So the ribbon was a pale pink, and I grabbed pale coral peonies, and at the time it looked okay. And then, you know, with natural lighting, I was like, I'm not sure about that. So my mom has a gift of telling me when bows don't look good, and so I pulled it off, and so I pulled that off maybe like not even a week ago, and sure enough it sold today, and I had it on hand, and UPS is already scheduled to come out, scheduled free through ship station. So I literally was just able to do the UV spray. I always go over things one more time because in a perfect world I would make sure everything is 1,000,000% secure before I bag it up. But I know too, sometimes when I'm in a rush, I might do shortcuts. So even if I see the moss on the back, I still like to go through it and add a little bit more glue from the glue gun just at the base, just in case. And if it's something that's been bagged up, so you know I use those 33-gallon recycling bags. If it's something that's been bagged up and it might be a little smushed, I always steam them. You know, again, it's like people want what's in the picture, and if it's been altered due to being stored for too long, then you got to zhuzh it up. You might need to add a little bit more greenery to it, but always be really thorough before sending something out. Alright, I'm going to take a step back and let's see how this is looking. I'm also going to let the dogs out because they seem rather anxious. Yes. They're eager to be outside. Alright, so now looking at this, it's my usual issue, which is this looks a little off. I do love how all of this is kind of coming out. Like that I love. I love the movement. And we still have one more green to go, but I want to just address this. I always wonder if you worked on this on a flat surface, if that would be easier to ensure that you have like the diameter completely covered. I don't like working on flat surfaces. I can't envision things the same way. So yep, so we've got Mother's Day coming up. We also have Father's Day. So if you do like, you know, whatever themed wreaths, like there's a variety. It could be like sports related or golf, or well, golf's a sport. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're getting that out way ahead of time. I always feel like Etsy shoppers are really prepared. Like they know it could take weeks, so they get their orders in early. And also with every holiday that passes, you want to make sure that if you are selling on Etsy, that you go back and you update it to the next holiday. So like right now, all the listings should say that they're for Mother's Day. I mean, unless it's something super specific like for Father's Day, but you know what I mean. And we just have to remember to do that every time. So it's like when Easter ended, that's when it was time to do Mother's Day. And Etsy is also really pushing that gift giving guide. So if you've checked it out, it starts with just a series of questions on who is this for? Is it for a friend? Is it for a spouse? And then it has a little grid of like what things do they like, you know, and again it could be, do they like whiskey, going outdoors and hiking, like things like that. So you want to think about what type of wording you would want to use. So again, we'll use a golf wreath as an example. You know, it could be golf wreath gift for him, or let me see, gifted wreath with golf theme or something like that. So that wasn't my most creative. But yes, and so like even for Mother's Day, like I find that a lot of women really love blue hydrangeas. So I will say, you know, blue hydrangeas for Mother's Day gift, or blue hydrangea wreath for Mother's Day gift. And when we're doing our listings, it has 2 sections to tag. The first one is to tag like what it is, what it's for. And then below it's to tag the materials. And the first section does not give you a lot of room to type. It's very limited with the amount of text you can put in. But below, under the materials section, it gives you a lot of space to write. So even though it's the wrong section, it's okay to use a few of those boxes to write out something really long. You know, like, again, with the golf. You know, like you wouldn't be able to fit that into the top section, and that's really important information. So go down below and say, you know, golf themed wreath for Father's Day gift. Father's Day gift, golf wreath, things like that. I wouldn't go crazy with all the tagging unless you can get some of that wording in, but it's definitely okay to keep using the word wreath. I mean, anytime that, you know, Google and AI, it's looking for the same words that our customers are looking for. So, you know, sometimes I use decor instead of wreath, but in general, it's okay to use wreath, you know, several times, because that's what it is. You know, it could be wreath for porch, wreath for front door, you know, and you can test out the wording by going to the search bar and just typing in the word wreath and see what comes up. And for me, it's, or at least for right now, it is wreath for front door. So for my titles, it would probably be something like hydrangea wreath for front door, you know, and then you can get into the details like indoor, outdoor use, high quality materials, you know, designer ribbon, whatever those things are. And we want to remember that the wording that we use is not necessarily the wording that a consumer uses. So like I say florals, but there's a good chance that people just say flowers. Like, and you know, if I don't want to shade men, but you know, if a guy is looking to get his wife a nice Mother's Day gift, you know, he's probably not going to like be like permanent botanicals, high quality silk florals. Like that's just not the wording that I think would be used. So you want to make sure that you're getting wording that is how anybody would describe it. So you can have some that's a little more formal, some that's a little less formal. Again, not being sexist. I mean, I couldn't really think of anything to describe the golf wreath, so I am in that same company. Alright, so now we're just kind of like at the nitpicky phase for this, and then we're going to move on to our final green. You know, I'm glad this is actually better than the one that the hurricane stole. So, you know, let this be a positive to hurricane theft. Oh my gosh, I've never tried to do this, but I just scraped, like, my glue pan is hot, and I just, like, scraped a bunch of it off of her. So we're just having a conversation about this. I know that I think Marion waits till it cools and uses a credit card and some elbow grease. And she had me a credit card, but then she lost me at elbow grease. So I'm just curious about getting some of the stuff off of her, and it's working. Sorry, this has nothing to do with the video. So I'm sure I could use something better than this stem too. Try and get that off. As long as we're careful that we're not touching like the D-hot pan. It would not be worth it. in with our mixed fern. And I didn't use this on the last one, so I think she is going to love it. So I'm going to give everything a bend. I mean, this is something I often use for like flair, but I do want to keep this, just everything going in the same direction. So actually, let me try it before I say what I'm doing. If it sticks out too much, I'm not going to use it. You know, I think this is probably why I didn't use it last time. I wanted it to be more flowy than this. All right, so I'm definitely going to be doing a little bit of tweaking post-video because I'm just going to have my head in your way right now. And some of it is just really going to be bending this wire so that it's going in the right direction. I'm doing a real thorough look to make sure if I got glue on anything. See, like that comes right off. And then this bow is all prepped. I mean, by now you guys know I go overboard with things. So I always pack my bows up like with a ton of tissue paper. So it's gonna end up going in here. And then my customer can take all this out. But I want it to ship like this. And that way also people know when it's off season how to store their bow so that it looks nice for the following year. Alright, so I'm going to be cleaning up the back. Actually, it's not that bad. Not sure why I'm so surprised, but... So any of these that are sticking out, and the pieces that we're cutting off, these are the pieces that have the glue on them. So we are going to go back and add some glue and a little bit of moss. And I've been using the expensive moss just because I was waiting for the other stuff to come, and I have to say it's nowhere near as messy. I don't think I want to spend that much on moss, but it has been a bit of an easier process to use. And I don't have moss throughout my whole house. Or stuck to my clothes. And sometimes I just feel around because you might not be able to see it, but don't go impaling your hand, just like lightly. And then my glue gun's off, so I won't be able to do it, but I'm going to take my glue gun, I'm going to add glue to all these pieces, add the moss on, then do our UV spray, and she will be ready to go. Alright, so here is our final product. So we started off on an 18-inch grapevine, and I would think this is around 22 to 24 inches, okay, and lots of movement. I'm going to add the bow once I've cleaned up the back, and she will be off to her new home. So I thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to this channel, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.